All right, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I appreciate you joining us on today's episode. Today is September 6th, 2012, and this is episode number 6. So you can find that at extremehealthradio.com/6. And we would really appreciate it if you would click like on this page and like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and all that good stuff. In case you're interested, all the shows are going to be transcribed for you. So anytime a guest says or speaks something, it's going to be searchable on our website. So if they mention something like a particular product or something like aspirin, and you want to search for that, anytime a guest has spoken the word aspirin on our website, you'll be able to pull that up. So it'll be like an online encyclopedia for you. So just give us about a week for the shows to be transcribed, and as well the show notes too. I know a lot of times I listen to podcasts and radio shows while I'm driving or out on a run or something, and to have the show notes on the page is going to be really helpful for you. So anytime a guest mentions a book or something like that, it's all going to be in the show notes. So no need to write it down. Just visit the show notes. So this will be extremehealthradio.com/6. And if you would like to send any questions for the guest or to me, just email them to Justin at extremehealthradio.com. Or you could call in your questions and we'll play your voicemail on the air. It's 949-391-7363. And I just wanted to say that this show is brought to you by Kombucha Camp. And that's run by Hannah Crum. And she's a really awesome lady out of, I think she's in Los Angeles. And she teaches you how to make kombucha. And she sells all the equipment, the scobies, and all the good stuff. And you can check that out at extremehealthradio.com/kombucha camp. That's with 2 Ks, all one word. And I just want to tell you before we introduce our guest today about our schedule coming up. Tomorrow we have David Wolf, and next week we've got Marcus Rothkranz, who's another raw food guy. And we have Danny Roddy, who is a researcher into things like the endocrine system, stress, and hormones. And we've got Ann-Louise Gettleman coming up, as well as Susan Schenk, and lots of really good people. We've got Dr. Bruce Shelton coming up on September 29th. So typically we do about 3 interviews per week. We try to stick to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so make sure to check out our show page for more information on all of that. Okay, so let's introduce our guest today. I'm really excited. It's Marjory Wildcraft, and I'll read you a little bit of her bio, and we'll get started. Marjory Wildcraft is the creator of a video tutorial called Grow Your Own Groceries, with over 250,000 copies being used in more than 30 countries around the globe. The video series quickly teaches people with no experience, how to turn their backyards into organic food-producing paradise. Marjory's work is highly endorsed by Mike Adams of the Natural News program, Alex Jones, the permaculture activist, and the Weston Price Foundation. Wow, Marjory, that's quite a bio. So you've sold over 250,000 of these DVDs.
There's 250,000, probably more out there actually, with all the should I say it, the torrent sites.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Out there. There's a lot. It's spread around, and I put a lot into it. Those videos are not something that were just slapped together and put up on YouTube. Those were years of research, and then very well crafted. I took almost a whole year off just making that DVD, and scripting and rewriting and then shooting and then editing. It's a process.
Wow, that's great. And you are based out of Texas, I believe?
We're outside of Austin, Texas. Yep.
Okay. And so you get pretty moderate temperatures out there throughout most of the year?
Well, Texas is a pretty wild place in terms of climate. And right here in the Austin area, we're at the intersection of 5 different bioregions, which is great in some ways, but in some ways it's not. You can get the weather patterns from almost any type of bioregion at any time. So we go from extremes of drought. We went through a 4-year period where we only got about 12, 15 inches a year, to extremes of rain where we got over 60 inches of rain one year. heat. Last year we had 90 days over 100 degrees, and then cold. It doesn't happen all the time, but we got down to 9 degrees, and you just never know when it's coming. So Peter Bain, who's the editor of the Permaculture Activist magazine, which is probably the most well-established permaculture magazine or outlet in the United States, and he reviewed the video set that I made, and he said, Marjorie, you're probably living, as harsh as it is, you're living in the environment we're all moving to with climate change. So it's really good you're doing the work you're doing. I'm like, well, Peter, I think I would like to move somewhere nicer.
Yeah, wow. So you've been doing this for how long?
A little over a decade now. A little over a decade.
Wow. So I would imagine just have everything dialed in terms of knowing all the tricks and all the solutions to, probably the most common problems people have, right?
We've got a lot figured out, but it's a wonderful. You're dealing with life, and you're dealing with the living organisms, and it's constantly changing, and it's very delightful in that way.
Wow, that's amazing. So what are some of the reasons that you think people should start gardening more and start trying to grow some of their own foods? What's the main, I know that, a lot of people have different motivations. What's your main motivation for trying to get the word out and teaching people that they should start considering doing that?
Gosh, you're right. I do have several motivations, but I'll tell you the story of how I got started in it. And that's, what got me started as I was volunteering with a group in my community to have locally grown vegetables over at the local elementary school. And it seemed like a slam dunk. And one of the people who lived in my county, his name was Steve Bridges, and he happened to be the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. And Steve had this vision and this dream of having fresh produce in all the schools across Texas. And I said, Steve, I do a lot in my community. Let me help you. We'll get it going, even though I'm homeschooling. Let's do it at this elementary school down the street from me. We'll get the template figured out, and then we'll replicate it everywhere across Texas. And we were so on it, and we had so many really talented and capable people on this project. And it wasn't until the third meeting that the whole thing fell apart. But up until then, everybody was very excited. The federal government has grant money, and the state, they want healthier kids. They just mandated that no vending machines could be in the schools, and they're trying to move toward it, and the parents and teachers, they know there's study after study after study that has shown that when kids eat good healthy food, they're better behaved, they make higher grades, they're just generally all around much more pleasant to be around, and they do better in school. And my personal experience, they smell better. But so we were totally on this. We were going to make this happen, but we sat in the third meeting. It all fell apart. We were at the local community center. We're sitting on those metal folding chairs around a folding table, and we finally put pen to paper. And between all of us in the group, we practically knew everybody who was growing organically in Texas, and we realized that there was not enough locally grown food in all of Bastrop County to provide part of the vegetables for one small elementary school. Yeah. And when that dawned, in fact, we realized we'd have to draw on a tri-county area to get enough vegetables for part of the need they need. And when that dawned on me, how little locally grown food there is. And then a lot of people have heard that, and especially people that are aware have heard that your food travels to you 1,500 miles, right? That was done by the research done by the Leopold Center. Right. Absolutely. It's because there is nothing growing out in the countrysides. All the small family farm network has been completely dismantled. There is no locally grown food. And when you combine that with the whole other, there's a lot of people are aware that there's only about 3 or 4 days. We have this just-in-time delivery system. There's only about 3 or 4 days worth of food in the grocery stores. When you look at that, and I couldn't stop shaking when it started to dawn on me the possibility of what could happen, and how destitute we had become in terms of our food supply. Mm-hmm. I couldn't stop shaking for hours, and I'm a big body-centric person, and when my body's like that, then I know this is. And when you see a problem and and you say, wow, this is a huge problem. What am I going to do about it? Or somebody ought to do something about it, right? And then you go, wait a minute, that might be me. And I really felt like I was the wrong person because I didn't know anything about growing food. I'd been involved in business and engineering and corporations and, running meetings and giving presentations. I wasn't, every houseplant I had died. I mean, I had a black thumb.
Right.
So I was like, whoa, this is universe. You got the wrong person here. Could you, God, look, I know you're infinitely wise and all that, but please, somebody else would be a whole lot. There's people that have been growing food for 20, 30, 40, farmers.
Yeah. I feel like we all feel like that, right?
Yeah, but, and I really, really, really struggled in the first years just because I had so many failures. But once it's really turned around. And once you really get some pretty simple principles, once you start to get that and start really producing and eating really good food, it just totally transforms and changes and becomes this wonderful, wonderful game to play. So I got started out of fear and panic, and I tell you, that still moves me. That's a big motivation. Now that I've been at this for so many years, the motivation is my health is so improved, and I enjoy it so much, and it's just an incredible lifestyle that I wouldn't give up. And it's something that I didn't realize, but I had been looking for years and years and years. It really complements something that I had needed, that had been missing from my life. The working with the soil and the joy of eating something that you've grown and then saving those seeds and planting that plant again, or planting some plants and there's some prickly pear pads somebody gave me, free on Craigslist. So I got a whole bunch of them and planted them around the farm. And just recently I had a big abscess tooth and used the prickly pear, made a poultice. That plant healed me.
Wow.
Man, you want to talk about a connection with the earth and with that plant? I go by that plant. We have a relationship that is really deep. So I helped it and encouraged it in its life, and then it has helped me and healed me and fed me. It's that's the carrot.
Yeah, I think that the motivation can be, twofold. One is, like you were saying, to have the ability to control your own food, and in case something happens, like you were saying, some of the motivations for you starting. But then also, if someone may not be all that scared of possible grid outages or whatever, so they just may want to be able to control their food in terms of nutrition. And just because something is organic doesn't mean that it's watered with good water, right? I mean, there's still things you can't control.
No, and in fact, I think you may have seen that study that just came out last week from Stanford University that was saying, organic food really isn't that much more nutritious than the conventional food. The only thing is it has less pesticides. And I could have told you that a long time. I've been eating organically grown food for a long time, and it has deteriorated. And in fact, the point where you can tell where the organic brand was completely usurped was when the USDA got involved in the organic standards. And you could tell as soon as the government got involved with it that it was no longer going to be a process that people and integrity and the fairness and rightness had something to do with. And it ain't sure it has been corrupted and usurped. The Cornucopia Institute is a good watchdog group of the USDA, and they're just constantly filing lawsuits because they're allowing chemicals into the organic standard that are in no means in alignment with what the spirit of organic is. Right. And it really comes, the food supply is so corrupted. There's very, very little in the grocery store that I feel comfortable eating. I really, most of it is just outright toxic in one form or another for the human body. Getting a clean food supply, I feel, either you're making a lot of money and you're paying farmers that you trust, or you're doing it yourself. And to be honest with you, doing it yourself is just an immeasurably pleasurable activity. So, okay, you got a hose in a backyard, you're halfway there.
Yeah, I know. I think people, are starting to wake up to this, and I think that, trusting the government for, everything that we trust them for is just not, a smart idea in my mind, because, God only knows, all the ways they lie to us and don't tell us the truth. And, just the other day I was at the farmer's market down the street here, and, a lot of the people don't even want to go for the organic because, the labeling, because it costs so much money to go through that whole process. And, I think that is happening more and more. And, just because it's organic doesn't mean it's necessarily even close to as healthy as what you could grow yourself.
Well, that's the other thing too, is as I've gotten into this more and more, and I had been coming to the same conclusions about the same time that I stumbled across Dr. Weston Price's material on nutrition and physical degeneration. And when I started a decade ago, I was actually a raw vegan, and I was very much experimenting. And I'm love to hear that David Wolf's going to be on tomorrow. I mean, I was a huge fan of his. I love David Wolf. And you've got some great speakers lined up. I'm really honored that I'm allowed to be in that lineup. But I was a raw vegan, and I ended up not being, because it's very difficult to grow that type of diet. But finding food that you can trust is a whole nother component of it.
Yeah, and what? So, like, for someone that's got, someone may be living in an apartment or, a small house with not much space. I know we have my wife and I have two just little small raised beds, and that's really kind of all we have right now. What would be the first thing that you would tell people or someone to do if they just want to start growing, something just to get the momentum going? A lot of people start with sprouting. What kinds of things would you tell people to do?
Sprouting is excellent, and I love your community. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of wheatgrass and some of those options, which are a great way to get that nutrition. That's what we're really seeking. Whoops! I am so sorry. Let me turn that off.
No problem.
What we're really seeking is nutrition, and trying to increase that, because it's just not available in the commercial food supply. Now, it's actually fantastic that all you have is two small raised beds. When I started out, my husband's grandmother was one of those women that she had an acre garden. She grew up as a toddler pulling weeds behind her mom and dad, and by the time she was an adult woman, she could manage an acre garden, and she was feeding her whole large extended family and part of the neighborhood from that thing. And so when I said I'm going to start growing food, my husband was thinking a nanny, and he went out and he plowed up an acre. And I'm going to tell you, we had an acre of weeds and frustration. It was horrible. So thank your lucky stars that all you have is a small place for a couple of raised beds, or even just a windowsill, because there's a tremendous amount. One of the other things that I recommend to a lot of people, and just because it's so impactful and so powerful right away, is to grow some culinary herbs. So basil or rosemary, maybe some chives. You can grow them on a windowsill, and a sunny windowsill, and do it in the kitchen or somewhere where you are frequently. That way you won't forget them.
Right.
And try to get as big a pot as you can fit on the windowsill, because the more soil that's in that pot, the less susceptible to water deprivation it's going to be. The more it's going to retain water, and the easier it'll be on you. You won't have to be as careful about it. But there's a couple of reasons for herbs, and one of them is everything you're learning about those 3 or 4 little plants that you have in the window. So you notice that you did not water them, and you see how the leaves are drooping. You're seeing how the plant's responding, and then you water it, and then you see how it rejuvenates. Or maybe Marjory told you not to do this. You went ahead and shot it up with some Miracle-Gro, and then you see it like totally turned yellow with these black spots, and you can see what it looks like when it's been over-fertilized. Or maybe it's not getting enough sun, and you're seeing they're turning pale. Everything that you're learning with that one plant or those 2-3 plants in that windowsill is the exact same thing you're going to need to know when you have a garden bed outside, maybe at a community garden center, or maybe a neighbor's yard. Or later on, if you're managing acres of crops, those plants are going to respond the same way. And what you're learning right there with just a few in your windowsill is is the gateway. It's the exact same information that you're gonna the exact same wisdom you're gonna need throughout your career growing food. So there's a lot of power in that. The other power is, of course, when you go to buy culinary herbs, they give you a little tiny bit of herb, and it's $6 or $10. Yeah, it's pretty expensive. You're never going to make pesto by buying it from the store, right? You got to grow your own basil in order to really get the quantities you want to make that wonderful fresh pesto, because they're expensive. But the other thing, even if you just do have a little bit, and I have heard this so many times, it's not only true in my family, but all my girlfriends, everybody I know, you take a little bit of fresh herb, and it will totally transform a dish. In fact, my family, we all kind of get into recipe rut, right? We all do. It's like, okay, we're going to have this time. And put a little bit of fresh herb on there, and my family was saying, hey, is this a new recipe? Or this is really good, Mom. Or, I'm getting compliments when I never, when before it was just dinner time. Right, so, right. Just a little bit of fresh herb will totally transform a dish. Okay. So there's a lot of power in just starting with a few herbs. And I'm a huge fan of sprouting. I'm also a big fan of wheatgrass. And those are some areas where you can really start to amp up your nutrition. Okay. Which is where we were going in that other question before I forgot. It was with Dr. Weston Price. And the piece of information that I got out of that really stunned me with Price's work was, if you remember, he not only went to visit all those indigenous peoples, but he took samples of their food and had it analyzed for nutritional content. And then he said, well, what's different about these people? And one thing that really struck me, and he did that back in the 1930s, so we're really talking before conventional versus organic. I mean, conventional was just starting to happen then. So, right. Average modern diet at that point was basically organic. He was finding out that the nutritional content in the indigenous peoples was 4 to 10 times what the equivalent of a modern diet back then was. Oh, wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard that. I heard some stats a while back about, someone even in the 1950s, today would have to eat like 56 peaches in order to get the equivalent of the nutrition of one peach in the 50s or something. It's just crazy. When we come back, I want to ask you a couple questions about compost, because I had a little disaster a few months back with my compost that perhaps you could help us with and other people with. And Marjory, I'm going to try to, I'm going to run this little spot here, and then afterwards, I'm going to call you on your landline, because on Skype here, we're getting some weird feedback. Would you mind if I do that?
Not a problem.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. Justin, you know what? My actually, our landline phone, the reason that I was getting that cell phone call is the landline phone isn't working right now, and that was hopefully the telephone man who's supposed to come fix it. So you can call me on a cell phone if you want.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting some cutout here on Skype. Yeah, let me run this little spot here, and then I'll pause the interview afterwards, and then we'll do some fancy editing, and then I'll get your I'll get your cell phone off the air.
Okay.
Okay, stay right there. What's up, everybody? I hope you're enjoying this podcast and this interview so far. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about a product I think you might be interested in. It's put out by a lady named Marjory Wildcraft. It's called Grow Your Own Groceries, and you can find that at extremehealthradio.com/groceries. And the product is really amazing. I think right now she's selling it for $67. It's a 2-disc DVD, and it comes with a separate DVD with over 60 supporting documents. And the DVD basically teaches you how to grow and be more sustainable. And one of the main reasons for growing your own food, there are two in my mind. The first one is that you never know how long or how stable the grid is. And so if something were to happen and you don't have access to a grocery store, there could be some real problems. So you just don't know how stable the grid is, and being a little bit more self-reliant is, in my mind, a a wise choice. So growing your own food for that reason is really, really ideal. You don't have to grow all of it, but some of it would be a good start. And the other reason to grow your own food is you can control the minerals that go into there. And she's a former raw foodist. She does eat, I think, somewhat raw now, but she understands the role of sea minerals and having a high quality nitrogen rich soil so that so each vegetable that you grow and fruit that you grow can uptake as many minerals. So she's really on the cutting edge of all this stuff. And in her DVDs, her 2 DVDs, she walks you through how to create a completely sustainable garden that is based on the principles of permaculture. And so I really strongly suggest that you check out the DVDs. It's a really high quality product, and we're due to have Marjory on our show soon if she hasn't been already. You can check it out at extremehealthradio.com/groceries to learn more about it. And I think you're really, really going to like it. So, and also if you want to visit our store, we've got a lot of high quality products. We only promote the best quality products that we know of. And on our store, we've got chemical-free glass cookware. We've got rebounders, blenders, dehydrators, workout programs, workout equipment, all kinds of really great things for you to benefit from. So check out our store if you really would like to help us, support us in that way. And if you'd like to just support us by sending us a donation, you can send as little as $1, and we'd really appreciate that. That would help us to continue our work. And if you ever make purchases on Amazon, please visit the bottom of any one of our web pages first and make a purchase that way, and we'll get a little commission for that. That'll help us as well. But if you're not interested in any of that, that's okay too. Just continue using our site and learning as much as you can. But just consider hitting like and following us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd really appreciate that. So thank you so much for listening and spreading the word. We really appreciate that. So let's get back to this interview. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate that. If you don't know, we have Marjory Wildcraft on, and we've actually changed the audio. She is now being called on her cell phone. We've gotten off Skype for a little bit and just trying to get a little better audio quality. So, Marjory, I wanted to talk a little bit about some compost issues that my wife and I had. Recently, we had some compost that we got from a farm around locally, and we're doing everything good. And I think we put too many wet things in there, like scraps from juicing and things like that. I learned later that I think you have to balance the wet and the dry because there was flies all over it, and it went bad pretty quick. Is that kind of a common mistake that you see people making?
Actually, usually it depends on your bioregion. Here in Texas, we almost can never get enough of the wet stuff. So our piles are almost always usually too much on the dry side. But yeah, it sounds like that's if you're doing a lot of juicing and green stuff, and I bet you are with the raw foods diet, then you'll probably have a lot more wet stuff than you do dry. And just balance that out with if you can find leaves or hay or your junk mail, you shred up a little bit, or old clothes that are natural cotton or wool or natural fiber. You can mix it with almost anything. It's surprising what you can put it in there. A rough guideline is you want about 50% dry to 50% wet. Okay. I often tend to go 3/4 dry to 25% wet.
Okay. And is there an issue with putting like some of your old newspapers and things that have that glossy print and the color stuff? Is there an issue with that kind of ink? Because I've heard that on some of the receipts there's chemicals and things. Is that an issue for composting?
As far as I knew, and I need to check this, like what the latest is, but up until very recently, the main story I had gotten from people who go into this in infinite detail was that most of the inks are soy-based. And believe it or not, that the glossy stuff like on magazines is actually a clay-based type of thing.
Oh.
So, composting that should be just fine. I even end up, sometimes there's bits of plastic or something in there too, and I often just end up composting that. It takes longer for it to break down, but it does eventually. So I'm not as totally completely concerned. Composting is this magical bacterial process that's really miraculous, and it can often fix a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that I'm learning the power of composting, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it's probably one of the most beneficial things you can do, right, for starting a healthy garden and making sure that your soil is nice and healthy, right?
It is the secret to a green thumb. Okay. It really is. Compost fixes everything. It fixes, sandy soil. It fixes clay soil. It fixes when you don't have soil. It really is the magical stuff, and it's the black gold. Our species has spent most of its time destroying most of the topsoil. And I feel going forward, the job of humanity as it remains is going to be to rebuild soil. And fortunately, you and I, working with nature, we can rebuild it a lot faster than nature can on her own. Mm-hmm. But that really is a secret. Remember, I was talking earlier about how I struggled for a lot of years, and because, quite frankly, I didn't know anything. And I would, go and visit other gardeners and other farmers. One example was I remember this one year I planted some broccoli, and it was in the fall. Mm-hmm. And broccoli is a plant that should be able to withstand a frost or a freeze pretty well. My broccoli was getting up. It wasn't doing great, but it was, growing leaves and doing okay. Mm-hmm. And we had that first November chill, and mine all died. I said, what is this? And I'm going and I'm visiting all these other farmers and gardeners that I know, and just asking around and looking at the differences. And my one neighbor, Brandon, who had the most vibrant garden of anybody I've ever seen, mm-hmm. just incredible, big, beautiful, healthy green leaves and this broccoli bursting with life. And I'm going back and forth and scratching my head. And really the main difference at the end of the day, and since then I've seen this over and over again, the main difference was Brandon was gardening in 2 feet of composted horse manure.
Oh my God.
He had this unbelievably rich and fertile soil that he also amended with all other kinds of things. So those plants had all the minerals that they needed. They had all the life and vitality that they needed. Those plants were incredibly healthy. And the same thing goes into the really, really good news about that soil being so healthy, and why I'm so delighted that you bring up the question of compost, because compost is so vitally important. I mean, everybody should go out and start at least one compost pile today. And I actually have numerous of them going around. There's different kinds of compost that are good for different things. But
oh, wow.
The really, really good news is those plants that are grown in that mineral-rich soil will have those minerals in it, and those plants will be stronger, and they'll be able to withstand all kinds of temperature ranges and the accidental not watering or whatever you throw at it, the wind and a lot of the other factors that nature is going to bring it. It'll be able to withstand that with no problem. In fact, those kind of plants don't have insect problems either. Mm-hmm. They're healthy. And the deal is when you eat that, you get those minerals and you become healthy. And I can absolutely verify this. I was born and raised in South Florida. I'm a native Floridian, mm-hmm. and I really sincerely, all my life, I thought when it was 75 degrees, I was reaching for a sweater or a jacket. I was very, very, very cold sensitive. I never thought I would live in a cold climate. Mm-hmm. But after years of eating my own hand-grown food that's been raised in really rich soil, those plants can withstand those temperatures. I'm very comfortable walking around barefoot in 40-degree weather. That is not a problem for me at all. And I can, my own ability to withstand heat and cold and all sorts of things is so much more improved because of I've basically been remineralizing my own body through eating food that I've grown in rich soil. Right. And we go back again to that Weston Price, 4 to 10 times the nutrition. It's unbelievable what you need if you really want to be healthy. My understanding is that the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, mm-hmm. that's the nutrition you need not to show symptoms of disease. it's not the nutrition you need to be healthy.
Oh, wow.
You know, and there's a big gulf between those two.
Yeah, that's a big difference. That's definitely, I wanted to ask you too about some, technologies that are out there these days. Like, I know of a product called Thalassa Mix. I'm not sure. I forget who puts that out. Then there's, things like rock dust or ocean water. And I know you run more of a, self-sustainable permaculture situation where you are, but are those kinds of things good to put in your compost, or good to put right on directly onto your soils? Or what do you think about those kinds of things?
Yeah, in the beginning I was a pretty diehard of like, we're going to try and do this in the scenario of the whole grid being down and nothing's available, and see if I can make it on my own like that. Mm-hmm. And since then I've said, I'm going to make life a lot easier for myself. And I recommend in the beginning, absolutely, getting some seaweed or getting some rock dust or rock powders or the azomite or some of the things with the minerals in it, mm-hmm. and build up your soil, and then continue to take care of your soil from that point on. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, very, very much so, get some supplementation. Also in my own diet, I used to not take any supplements at all. I'm very, very leery of the supplement market. Mm-hmm. But recently, I have started taking some supplemental vitamins, just even because, even with what I'm doing, I'm wanting to get more nutrition. Right. So, yeah, very much so. And I'm always thinking, that may not be your concern, but I'm always thinking, well, what if the truck stopped rolling and I've built a whole system that's dependent on me getting an input from the feed store, and the feed store closes. Right. So I'm always, let's use those systems while they exist, and let's help them to jumpstart us and get us up going faster. But, in my mind, I don't want to be dependent on them. Actually, that's one of the reasons I went as a transformation from a raw vegan to, and I do incorporate a lot of raw still into my diet, but that's why I ended up eating meat products, was mm-hmm. I found out that growing meat is much, much easier than growing the fruits and vegetables. And also, in any kind of a system, you need the diversity of sources, because you just, things aren't always very reliable, so you always want to have a whole lot of different things going on. But growing meat is actually easier, and it's not just here in Texas. I've traveled all over since then. Mm-hmm. Up in the Northeast, out on the West Coast, in the Pacific Northwest, and some of the Western Interior in Idaho, and then also in Costa Rica and Hawaii, and talking with the farmers and the permaculturists and the gardeners there. And growing meat is easier everywhere than it is growing fruits and vegetables. So, when I was a raw vegan, I'm looking at the label and going, okay, I'm going to Himalayan sea salt, and, I'm getting, maca from somewhere in South America, and I'm getting, mangoes from here, and then bananas from there. None of this stuff grows in this bioregion. I was loving that diet. I totally loved the raw vegan diet. It just really worked for me really well. Yeah. But I couldn't grow any, really what you can grow here. Texas is a meat products place, and that's the food source that's here. Yeah, I was a 100% raw vegan for 7 years, and recently, since 2010, I think I've been, doing some meats and doing some grass-fed organic and chicken, and I've been doing some stuff like that, as well as eggs and things. I think it's a great, for me. I find that it's working really, really well, and I would imagine having a farm or backyard with chickens and with a whole sustainable thing, each part of your system would help every other part, and you would do certain things to contribute to the whole, right? Well, that's the other big benefit of having animals is the air is 70% nitrogen. And nitrogen is one of the big elements that plants love and need and want more of. It's the NPK, it's the N on the NPK on the fertilizer bags that you're not going to be buying at the big box stores. But it's that one. But the plants can't really deal with they can't get nitrogen themselves. But you and I, in our excrement, and also in our urine, there's an abundance of plant available nitrogen, just because it's a byproduct of our, we're breathing in and breathing out, and it gets incorporated into our waste products. And the same is true of animals. And animals can really help you jumpstart getting fertility going in your system. So they're a real important part of that in my system. And you can do it all completely vegetarian. It's just going to be a lot more work.
Now, how long is your DVD set?
Well, gosh, I'm not sure. There's 2 full-length DVDs there, and we go over in the first one. We go over overview of what the climate and soil is like here. We go over water. Water is the most important thing in your system, and having different sources of water and different types of salt water, and which water is better. Okay. And we go into the garden, and my whole thing is like, what is the fastest, the easiest, and the funnest way to grow food? Because look, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I love it. Right. But what is it? Realistically, it does take some time. So what is the fastest, easiest, most efficient gardening technique? And we'll go over that in quite a bit of detail. And also other things, how do you know when you watered too much or too little, and what other factors, how much do you have, how can tools on dealing with shade, and, when do you need it and when you don't, a whole lot of creativity there. And then I go into rabbits, and my rabbit hutch is right next to my garden. And boy, talk about a synergy there, because the biggest thing people usually hate in gardening is weeding. Right. And I absolutely hated weeding. I mean, who wants to spend time pulling out plants? But now I am not weeding. I am collecting free rabbit food.
Oh, that's right.
And I tell you what, it changes the whole thing. In fact, now I'm looking at some grass that's growing in one of my beds. It's actually I was just looking at this morning. I'm like, you guys aren't big enough yet. I'm going to let you grow for a little while longer, a couple more days, and then I'm going to pull you out and feed it to the rabbits. So I'm like letting stuff, even grow more. So having that rabbit garden synergy, and I show you a lot of other synergies and things like that just make the whole process a lot more enjoyable and a lot more fun. I also go into butchering and home butchering, and I demonstrate how to butcher a rabbit. And I went through the whole emotional and psychological process of being a raw vegan for a lot of reasons, and one of them, not really wanting to ever kill anything, was one of them, to realizing that I'm going to be taking life and eating the flesh of this animal. And how do you do that with honor and with integrity and with compassion? And in fact, I've gotten tons and tons of emails, feedback from vegetarians that say, I may not be ready for this, but you did that so lovingly and so well. I could if I had to. And that's a huge step.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand. I mean, it kind of brings people into the cycle of life, and it's like getting a dog for a child. They learn about birth and death, and I think that's an honorable thing. How much? We got to take a break in a couple minutes, but I was wondering, how much of your food do you grow? All of your food completely yourself, or do you grow like 90% of it, or?
I grow about half. Okay. I grow about half. Yeah.
Wow. And so
we'll get back into that. We'll get back into that right after the break. But that's a great question to continue on more.
Yeah. I'd like to find out more about what your your system and what you have going on. But we'll be right back. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Marjory Wildcraft. Hey there, I hope you're doing really well today and enjoying the interview. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about a product that I really think is a really good product, actually. It's put together by Jenny over at Nourish Kitchen, and it's called How to Ferment Anything. And it's a e-product that teaches you how to ferment everything from pickles to sauerkraut to breads to milks, and so you can make cheeses, and you can make yogurts and all kinds of really amazing things. Now, if you are someone who's been listening to this show, you know the value of fermented foods and how fermented foods basically provide you the bacteria that keeps your immune system strong, and that it basically is your immune system. So eating some fermented foods on a daily basis is critical to your health, and she teaches you how to make anything you want fermented, and it's really an awesome program. I think it's got 50 video tutorials, 12 ebooks, more than 100 recipes, tutorials, articles, and fact sheets, all devoted to fermented foods, along with workshops and fact sheets and tips and guidelines. all done by video. It's recommended by Donna Gates, if you know who she is, who wrote the Body Ecology Diet. So I strongly suggest you check it out. You can learn more about that at extremehealthradio.com/ferment. And you can also visit our store too for other great products like this. In our store, we've got food preparation products for how to cook real food, how to prepare raw food, workout programs like Qigong and herbal programs, yoga programs, how to grow your own food and make a really healthy garden for you to be more sustainable, parenting programs, cancer, weight loss, cleansing, all kinds of great stuff. So check out our store. I think you're really going to like the products that we have over there for you. And if you want to make a donation, you can do that too. You can donate as little as $1, and it's all done through PayPal, and it is just so greatly appreciated. I can't tell you, so many people donate, and we just are so grateful for everyone who sends in a donation. So thank you so much for that. And if you ever make purchases on Amazon, consider going to extremehealthradio.com/Amazon or the bottom of any one of our pages, and you'll learn you can click on that link, and anything you buy from Amazon, we'll get a little commission that will help pay the bills as well. And feel free to like us on Facebook too. Send us or like us on Twitter. Send our link to your friends, and all of that stuff is so greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for listening, for supporting us. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. So with that said, let's get back to the interview. Okay, so Marjory, we just wanted to give out your website to our listeners. Is it backyardfoodproduction.com or is it the Grow Your Own Groceries?
Actually, both of them. Both of them will work just fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Are they two separate websites, or are they combined?
They're two separate websites, but they end up they're the same product. It's all the Grow Your Own Groceries product. We started out originally calling it Backyard Food Production.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, so people can visit that website and check out your DVD. And before the break, we were talking about the amount of food that you are growing, and you said it's roughly about 50%?
About half, yeah. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. One is I feel if I can do half, then if I need to switch it on at any time and start going full production, I can. Mm-hmm. There also, I'm running a small business. I'm a wife and a mom of 2 kids and involved in my community. And I spend about an hour or 2 hours a day on average, actually somewhere between an hour to 2 hours, working in the garden or working with the trees or the animals or livestock. And that, for me, is a good amount. Actually, that amount of time, for me, is my most precious time. It's my yoga, it's my Tai Chi. Mm-hmm. When I'm watering, it's my Zen. Sometimes chasing down the loose rabbits, it's my it's my aerobics. Depends on what's going on. But for me, I just really enjoy that. It's outside, physical, real world stuff. And that's a good amount, because there's some mornings when I don't have time to cut the feed for the rabbits with a scythe, and I'm just going to grab some pellets that I bought from the feed store and dump it in there because we got to take the kids to the dentist, right? Or it's the real world. So. Right. And I feel like I'm still getting a really good quality amount of nutrition this way, and supplementing it with what I buy or trade from neighbors and local farmers. Okay. And in a little co-op we've got.
So if something were to happen, I think there's like a 3-day window where it's sort of food at the grocery store is on demand for about 3 days, and that's all they really have in storage. So if if something were to happen to the grid that would put our food production or our food in jeopardy, how long should people really think about having food available, do you think, that they can grow themselves?
Well, the 3 days or 4 days of inventory that's in the grocery stores will be gone long before 3 days. Everybody's so connected with cell phones and flash mobs and flash whatever, and we've seen that in the hurricane states. That stuff it's just gone off the shelves almost instantly. I recommend having at least a year's supply of backup food.
Okay.
And as a raw foodist and being careful, it's a little bit difficult to do that. I'm looking into sources of whole grains that I can store, and other foods and dehydrated foods that I dehydrated or dried myself. Squashes or tomatoes or things like that. And I do a little bit of canning of meats. I don't really enjoy canned meats, but the rabbits and the rabbit production, or the chickens and the eggs, that's just always ongoing anyway. So you don't really need to store that much. But I've definitely explored smoking meats and drying meats. And, I love that fermentation woman you talked about. I'm a huge fan of eating some fermented food every day, and usually grow a couple of cabbages every winter to go ahead and make my own kimchi, and have that on hand for throughout the year for the probiotic boost.
Yeah, I love fermented foods as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I also find, if I get, like last year, I got to traveling a lot, and I had a couple of crop failures, and then now I'm like really scratching my head, and it's a great challenge. I'm eating more prickly pear, and I'm eating more wild foods than I would have, because I'm still keeping up to that. I want to eat half of what I grow, and as you know, at anything, when you really stretch yourself and get into a hard place, then the creativity comes in.
Right.
And that's a good thing. And I'm also a big fan of diversity. The average American, I think, only eats about 12 vegetables. Oh, wow. And then that's including all their meat products. So corn is the big one, wheat, soy, potatoes, tomatoes, green beans. That's about it. That's about all that Americans eat. So I'm always, just this morning I was having farkleberries and American beauty berries and a couple of eggs from the chickens, and some prickly pear fruits that we got from the neighbors, and and so there's a lot more going on in all of that different stuff, and the more diverse things you're eating, the more chances you're getting of a lot more nutrition and different phyto elements and vitamins that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Right. I've been learning a lot about, diversifying your diet, and that's one of the things that I'm just horrible at. Because once I find a food, I'll eat that for years, before I change my diet. But I wanted to ask you real quick too. I know you talked about a special going on for our listeners. We'll get to that at the very end of the interview in about 10 minutes or so. But I wanted to ask you about what vegetables are good, or fruits are good for each season? Like, what are some of the common, for right now, it's coming into fall, and each season has its own sort of best vegetables that you could grow, right?
Yeah, it does. And to be honest with you, when we started, I had no clue. I really didn't. I thought that, bananas and apples or oranges are available year round,
Yeah, I don't really know either.
I mean, it seems like that way. The best way, and it varies from region to region of what's coming in when. Okay. And the absolute best way to start learning that is to start going to farmers markets and hanging out and seeing what they're bringing in. Okay. Now, in general, in the farmers markets, the farmers are much more focused on what they're doing than I am, and they're making a living on selling as produce. So I notice they're often getting stuff in earlier than I do. Like, they'll have lettuces show up before I do, because they spend a lot of time carefully harvesting or planting that and tending that and getting it up, because that's what their living is based on. But you'll get a good sense. Broccoli does not grow in 100-degree weather, but tomatoes are doing good now. Corn is coming in. Corn loves the sun and the heat, and sweet potatoes are another crop that's doing really good, and it's starting to come in. Squashes are your warm season, and then your cool season stuff are going to be your broccolis and Brussels sprouts and spinach and lettuces, and that's the wonderful thing. There's also I found a lot of the weeds that come up just have a super abundance of vitamins and minerals, and often are really tasty. They're not marketable because you have to eat them right away. They wouldn't last very long on a grocery store shelf, but that doesn't matter to you and me.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what I've been wondering for a long time is, do you know if there's a list, some kind of master list out there that that has on there all of how many minerals each plant will take up, or each fruit or vegetable will take up? Because I know that, like a tomato, I think it's like 56 minerals it can take up. I think grass can take up all of them. Is there like a master list that you know of that has this kind of information out there? I don't know. That would be a good one to look at, because then on the converse side of that is, if there's something wrong with your plants, then which mineral is missing? Yeah. A good rich soil, I think there's at least 64 minerals that plants need to be healthy, and conversely that you need to be healthy. And the quantities of the big ones are pretty well known, but the smaller trace amounts are not. Most people just pick up some seaweed or maybe some azomite or something and cover that, rather than just cover it as a one swoop thing, and not try to focus too much on the microelements. Just make sure you have them. Right. I wanted to ask you a little bit about saving seeds and seed storage and things like that. Do you do a lot of that?
As much as I can, yes, very much so. And in fact, the bonus CD that comes with the DVD set has a whole full book on seed saving in it, as well as a whole bunch of it's a whole library full of books and documents that are useful to the whole program. But very much so. And that's also one of the incredible connections and joys of, there's some veg that I've been growing now for 5 or 6 seasons. And, years, I would say. They only grow once, they only grow in the winter. So, and I harvest and sow and harvest and sow. And I've got a relationship with that plant going. And the same with corn. I've been growing some corn and then saving the seed and then planting it again. Not only is there that connection with you and you're in that plant, it just grows in terms of how well you understand the plant, and there's something even more deeper in the relationship there. But also another thing is that plant will get more and more adapted toward your soil, toward your site, and toward your climate better and better. And that plant will grow better for you year after year as you save your seeds and replant. Wow.
Do you have any books that you recommend outside of your product, which I highly encourage everyone to get? Are there any books that kind of change your life as far as all of this is concerned?
Well, the one book that I would very, very much recommend, and it only focuses on vegetables, so it's not going to add the meat component, but it's called How to Grow More Vegetables Than You Ever Thought Possible in Less Space Than You Can Imagine by John Jevons.
Okay.
And John was a very forward-thinking man, and back in the 1970s, there was an oil crisis, there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and he started to say, what is the minimum amount of land that you need in order to grow a full diet for one human being? And he was focusing on a vegetarian diet, because when you do add meat in there, it's really hard to do the numbers and keep the research clear. Plus, a lot of places where his methods are used, and they're used all over the world now, people can't afford a chicken, or they can't afford a rabbit. I mean, that would be, outrageous to them. So he has totally documented and researched exactly what you need to grow and come up with this amazing method that is the easiest method to grow with. And I've interviewed hundreds of homesteaders and organic farmers. Everybody has this book in their library, and they use it regularly. And it's a very good book for beginners. It lays out the principles, but the tables in the back with all the information on seed longevity and spacing and yields of commercial versus home gardeners, those tables will be something that 30 and 40-year veteran organic farmers are still using and referring back to. So it'll be a book that will continue to be something you use over and over again. I highly recommend it. It's called How to Grow More Vegetables Than You Ever Thought Possible by John Jevons.
Okay, wow. I'm gonna have to actually check that out and check out your product as well. And do you talk a bit about rainwater and things like that, and how to collect rainwater?
Very much so. We are, here in Texas, rain is it is the other gold. And in the bonus CD that comes with the whole full thing, and I'll also in the video we show you the different rainwater systems that we have. Everything from a massive one off of a barn that collects 34,000 gallons, down to even a little tiny one that we have on a little chicken tractor that's maybe only 20 square feet. It's a little tiny thing. So we collect water off of every roof that we can. And in the bonus CD that comes with that library of books, there's a whole book on how to make a rainwater collection system and examples of other systems that are built in different places. Do you want to use ferro cement tanks, or do you want to use poly tanks, or do you want to use fiberglass tanks, and what do those installations look like? What is going to be the maintenance? What is going to be the cost? There's always trade-offs with everything, but that book covers the whole thing, and it's included as a part of the kit.
Oh wow, that's awesome! It's so great these days. I know there's a lot of issues with the internet and things like that, but man, it's so great for someone like me who really just doesn't know a whole lot about gardening. I've had my opportunities, and I've tried a few times, but for someone like me and others out there like me, it's just so great to be able to purchase something like a product that you've put out, and it just cuts through hours and hours and years of learning. It's just amazing, isn't it?
It is. We live in this wonderful time. We do. It's the internet is this magical thing, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. The one reason I made the DVD was I used to teach a workshop. It was a full-day workshop where we went over everything that's in the DVD series. And it got to where it was booked. It was overbooked, and I couldn't really keep up with it. And I said, well, we're going to have to try and get another way to disseminate this information. And that's what was the genesis of the video series. And it was really trying to be able to reach that demand on a larger scale. And thank God we have those networks. Isn't it amazing?
Oh, it's so great. We're just closing out here, but I wanted to, I know you mentioned something about a special for our listeners. I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, let me tell you now, this is a little, on the Grow Your Own Groceries website, you'll go there and you'll see the main thing, which is the full DVD set. Okay. And then I couldn't find out another way to do this. So if you don't want to get that, I would highly recommend you get it. It's an incredible value. You'll be very happy with it. But if you don't want to try that and you want to try something, I've got an introductory product. And what I did is, I'm not a computer person. I'm mostly outside in the garden. Okay. At the very bottom of the page, I put down a special introductory. It's a $7. I call it the Instant Master Gardener course. Okay. And it's a series of 7 videos I send you, one each day for a week. Uh-huh. And we'll talk about the secret of a green thumb, and I'll give you really dramatic examples of why you want to have that good soil. We'll talk about how much land do you need. If you wanted to grow all the food that you needed, how much land would you need? That's a big question. A lot of people want, do you need an acre? Do you need 100 acres? What do you need?
Right.
And I also talk about seed saving, and I interview an expert seed farmer, and we talk about the basics that you need to know to make sure your seeds are going to stay safe and viable, and what are some of the realities of seed saving. There's some outrageous claims being made on the internet by these fly-by-night seed companies, so this guy's the real deal. Right. We also talk about your huge advantages. There are incredible advantages that you have as a home gardener over a big commercial guy, and we'll point that out. In fact, the yields that you can get out of your garden are at least double than what the commercial growers can do. Plus, you're going to be saving a lot of other water and other things. Wow. And then at the very end, I send you a video on this free, really powerful fertilizer that you can make yourself, and it's incredible. Yeah, so it's just $7, and the way I structured it was just scroll down to the bottom of the page, and that offer will be down there. And we'll have it up there for a little limited time for listeners for this show. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks, Marjory, for staying on for so long. And would you mind staying on after I close out the show? Not at all. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marjory. Really, really appreciate that. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you got some good information out of that. I apologize for the sound quality and having to switch over to the cell phone. That happens sometimes, technology acts up and there's really nothing you can do about that. So I apologize. Hopefully that was a good interview. And if you want to purchase her DVD, I'm going to buy that. It's really, really cool. I'm really happy about that. It's you can buy it. If you buy it through us, we'll get a little commission, and that will help us out. It's extremehealthradio.com/groceries, and we'll get a little commission if you're interested in buying that. And you can always find links to it on the show page. So thanks for joining us today, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you can, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.